Yeah, that is. I think there's lots of good things people can do for the climate, but just generally anything that is moving towards sustainable energy, whether it's sustainable energy generation through solar or with an electric vehicle. Actually, just things like better insulation in a house just is really effective for energy consumption. But oh geez, Marvin. It's ingratiating. That's Marvin the Martian.
Oh.
I actually got him a little, for Halloween, a little knitted Marvin the Martian cap. So he had the little, the helmet with the, it looked super cute.
You got enough, buddy?
So did you always know, business was the way you wanted to kind of attack these problems versus, say, maybe a nonprofit or, working as a college professor or something? I don't know.
Well, when I was in high school, I thought I would most likely be doing physics at a particle accelerator. So that's what I was, physics and computers. I mean, I got distinctions in 2 areas, in physics and computer science, and those were, some of my 2 best subjects. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to figure out what's the nature of the universe, and so go try to working with people, banging particles together, see what happens, and then it sort of things went along, and the superconducting super collider got canceled in the U.S., and that actually was like, whoa, what if I am working at a collider? It's been all these years, and then the government just canceled it.
Wow.
And then was like, I'm not going to do that. So it's like, so well, we roll back a little. I was trying to figure out when I was a kid, I had like this existential crisis, and I was about 12 years old or something, and I was like, well, what does the world mean? What's it all about? We're living some meaningless existence. And then I made the mistake of reading Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I'm like, whoa, don't do that. Not if you need to be a little older, I think. No, actually, lately, these days I read it. He's not that bad. He's got issues. No question about it. But it's anyway. But then I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, which is like quite a good book on philosophy, I think. And I was like, okay, we don't really know what the answer is, obviously. But the universe is the answer. And really, what are the questions we should be asking to better understand the nature of the universe? And so then, to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we'll better be able to ask the questions and understand why we're here or what it's all about. And so we should sort of take the set of actions that are most likely to result in us understanding what questions to ask about the nature of the universe. So therefore we must propagate human civilization on Earth as far into the future as possible, and become a multi-planet species to, again, extend the scope and scale of consciousness and increase the probable lifespan of consciousness, which is going to be, I think, probably a lot of machine consciousness as well in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's the best we can do, basically, and that's the best we can do. So, and thinking about the various problems that we're facing or most likely change in the future, when they were in college, there were sort of 5 things that I thought would be, I thought these were actually, these I would not regard this as a profound insight, but rather an obvious one. The internet fundamentally changed humanity because it's like humanity become more of a superorganism, because the internet is like a nervous system. Now suddenly any part of the human organism anywhere would have access to all the information.
Amazing.
Instantly.
Neuralink.
Hey, well, I can imagine if you didn't have a nervous system, you wouldn't know what's going on. Your fingers wouldn't know what's going on. Or your toes wouldn't know what's going on. You'd have to do it by diffusion.
Oh gosh.
And and the way information used to work was really by diffusion. One human would have to call another human,
or actually
write
there.
them. It's like if it was a letter. You'd have to write. You have to have a letter to another human. That would be carried through a bunch of things. Find another one would give it to you. Extremely slow diffusion. And if you wanted access to books, if you did not have a library, you don't have it. That's it.
Right.
So now you have access to all the books instantly, and you can be in a remote, like, mountaintop jungle location or something, and have access to all of humanity's information if you've got a link to the internet. This is a fundamental, profound change. So that's one thing. I was on the internet early because of in the physics community that was pretty normal, although his interface was almost entirely text and hard to use. But then another one, obviously making life multiplanetary, making consciousness multiplanetary, changing human genetics, which obviously I'm not doing, by the way. There's a thorny subject. But it is being done with CRISPR and others. It will become normal to I think, to change the human genome. It will become normal.
Like, what's the opportunity? Like, why is that something that's inevitable? Or,
well, I think for sure, as far as, say, getting rid of diseases or propensity to various diseases, then that's gonna be like the first thing that you'd want to edit out. So it's like if you've got like a situation where you're definitely going to die of some kind of cancer at age 55, I prefer to have that edited out.
yeah, definitely.
So I think so edit that out. There's the Gattaca sort of extreme thing where it's not really edited out, but it's like it's edited in for various enhancements and that kind of thing, which probably will come too. But I'm not saying arguing for or against it. I'm just saying this more likely to come than not down the road. Yeah. So then AI. Really major one.
So these are all big motivation factors, right? Keep our consciousness going.
Oh, and it's sustainable. Yes, sustainable energy. So sustainable energy actually was something that I thought was important before the environmental implications became as obvious as they are. It's simply because if you mine and burn hydrocarbons, then you're going to run out of them. Because it's not like mining say metals, for example. If you we recycle steel, aluminum, and because it's not a change of energy state. Whereas if you take fossil fuels, you're taking some from a high energy state, converting it to a low energy state, like CO2, which is extremely stable. So whereas we will never run out of metals, not a problem. We will run out of mined hydrocarbons, and then necessarily, if we've got billions, ultimately trillions of tons of hydrocarbons that were buried deep underground in solid, liquid, gas form, whatever, but they're deep underground. You sort of move them from deep underground to the oceans and atmosphere, you will have a change in the chemistry of the surface, obviously. And then there's just a certain probability associated with, well, how bad will that be? And the range of possibilities goes from mildly bad to extremely bad. But then why would you run that experiment? That seems like the craziest experiment ever, especially since we have to go to sustainable energy anyway. Why would you run that experiment? It's just the maddest thing I've ever heard. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some use of hydrocarbons on Earth, but there just should be the correct price placed on CO2 production. And the obvious thing to do is have a carbon tax. It's a no-brainer. I don't know, the 90+% of economists would say this, and I think of physicists, and it's just the market system works well if you've got the right price on things. It's very, very simple. And if you've got a price of zero, effectively or very low, then it's people will behave accordingly. So just that's the thing that needs to get done. It will get done. And then if over time as you raise the price on carbon, you can actually, I think, encourage sequestration technologies over time. And there'll be a lot of innovation in that regard. And that's the right way to do it.
So you had these realizations about areas of big value, and you went and started Zip2. You sold it, got 20 million cash. You were the largest shareholder of PayPal at the time. eBay acquired it. I think you got 160 million, something like that. You have enough money basically for an entire lifetime. Why go and put your money in space, which is a huge, risky operation, or Tesla? Why not just kind of, relax?
So yeah, basically, I graduated from Penn with basically physics and economics. And then sort of to Stanford with Robin Wren, who was in my physics class, and works at Tesla actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, he was giant. So, this was the first guy. Yep, continued at Stanford, and I ended up going on deferment a couple of years after. But I was going to be studying material science and the physics of high energy density capacitors for use in electric vehicles. So the intent was, I was going to go, okay, I'm going to work on energy storage solutions for electric vehicles. And I'd worked at a company called Pinnacle Research for a couple summers that did high energy density capacitors. I was going to try to do effectively like a solid state version of what they were doing with we're going to get very complicated from a technical standpoint, but using a ruthenium 10 oxide, ruthenium is extremely rare and can scale that. Like, can you find a substitute for ruthenium? But we're able to get to energy densities comparable to a lead-acid battery, but with incredibly high power density. So I go down a deep rabbit hole there. But
what's the purpose of a capacitor in an EV?
Ultra capacitor.
No, we got into high-energy lithium-ion batteries. A capacitor is not the right path.
What was your thinking back then, though, that made you think it could be useful for EVs?
I wanted to use advanced chip-making equipment to make capacitors that were precise at a molecular level. So at the, just a level of precision that was sort of unheard of in capacitors. The capacitor's energy is a function of its area and a separation distance. So if you have very tiny separation distance, you can inhibit quantum tunneling. It's how deep is pretty esoteric. So you can inhibit quantum tunneling, give a very short gap. And then you could, in theory, get to very high energy densities by making capacitors in the way that you make an x86 processor. And since there were companies going into chip making R&D, that I thought there might be a way to make an advanced capacitor using chip making equipment instead of conventional means.
So is it off table, ultra capacitor?
It's unnecessary.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's unnecessary. I think it's probably physically possible, but it's unnecessary at this point.
I mean, I know a lot of people are talking about Maxwell, and they've been working on some stuff with capacitors.
The funny thing is that when I was doing my internship at this capacitor company called Pinnacle Research, which was in Las Vegas, we talked a lot about Maxwell. And Maxwell was also trying to make high energy density capacitors now. Tesla acquired Maxwell.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Looking forward to that investor day.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
That's great. Big to know.
Maxwell has a bunch of technologies that where they're applied in the right way, I think can have a very big impact.
Like the dry electrode stuff?
That would be one of them.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Much bigger deal than it may seem. Yeah. And there's a few other things.
With the space that it takes up for the ovens, that for the current technology, you can save that real estate space now. That's one aspect, and the cost reduction, the weight savings. I mean, there's so many pluses, right?
Yes, and there's many things there, but I'll have to wait until whatever battery day,
Sure.
which is hopefully in a few months. But I think that's some pretty exciting things to share. So
Galley's very excited.
Yeah. It seems like the pace of the innovation of the battery thing has just taken off. Like since you guys are Marvel and being able to have the Gigafactory be vertically integrated, just seems like no other car company is making that many batteries. So they're not even thinking about what comes next. But that
they're not
even,
Not even come close at all. I can't turn one.
not even.
That's a joke.
Yeah, it's true. The other car companies just really want to outsource battery technology. Not even making this battery module and cell, but they're obviously outsourcing the cells, but even outsourcing the modules and the packs.
Yeah.
And it's like they're really not thinking about fundamental chemistry improvements, and there's some pretty deep wisdom has on this front. I'd say a bit about like electric vehicles and sustainable energy in general. So it was pretty, I think, obvious to not just to me, but to a lot of people, even go back 30 years or longer, that we must have a sustainable energy solution. In fact, it's so logical. If it's not sustainable, we must at some point find an alternative to it. Mm-hmm. And so, even if there were no environmental impact to the sort of fossil fuel economy, then we wouldn't have them, and then we have economic collapse, and civilization would fall apart. So that's actually my motivation for vehicles. Like, okay, we've got to have a solution that does not require mining hydrocarbons. That is sustainable in the long term. It was not actually from an environmental standpoint, because I don't realize the gravity of environmental situation at that time. And I thought actually for sure by now we'd have electric cars. Like
For sure.
But
Are we back on the moon?
yeah, totally. Why are we not back on the moon? It's insane.
It doesn't say.
If you told somebody in 69 that we're not be back on the moon and in like 2020, they'd be like, you might have gotten punched, honestly, because I'd be like, you're just, it's like so insultingly rude to the future. They'd be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's encouraging. Space is encouraging them.
Yeah. So it's like we should have base on them. We're going to get to Mars. No, that's occurred. We've got to make that happen. Yeah, so on the sustainability front, it was really, like I said, not so much initially, not so much from an environmental standpoint, but from the necessity of replacing a finite resource in order to ensure that civilization could continue to grow. And the urgency of it became much more obvious. Like, wow, we really better do something because the environmental stuff is becoming quite serious. And the inertia of large existing companies is just hard to appreciate. They just want to keep doing the same thing, and maybe 5% different every year, maybe 5% different. Big companies hate change, so then the time that Tesla, was created, there was no one was doing electric cars. No, they weren't really startups. They weren't big car companies weren't doing it. GM totally canceled their programs.
Now everybody's doing it right now. Like.
And mom. Apparently the mom is doing it.
And all the talking about Gigafactory 3 or 4. Yeah, it's that big. And I'd like to know, like, why China the best country to build the first foreign Gigafactory?
China is the biggest consumer of cars in the world, so that alone would be enough to do it. I think also there's a lot of uncertainty about tariffs, and it's like we potentially would be unable to sell effectively in China if we did not have a factory locally, or at least unable to sell at prices that would be extremely high. But those are really the two main reasons. I think that. But I think there's also a third important reason that there's just so much talent and drive in China that I think it's a good place to do a lot of things. And the evidence is there in the progress of the factory, which was built with very, very high quality in a very short period of time. The costs coming out of Shanghai are very, very high quality.
I can tell, and the run rate is amazing.